Hello. You joined me in the middle of nowhere uh, for what I want to call a new-ish series that I want to start. Um, it's a series that I had in mind for quite a while now. Let's see if this helps. But I never got around to doing it, mainly because I was so busy with university. I guess I should introduce myself for those who do not know who I am. Those who do know my channel, yes, you can skip this bit for a bit. But my name is Andrew. I am an illustrator and artist working in the UK. Been doing it for about 6 years or so. Recently finished university with a bachelor's and off to do my master's. I guess that's the really short version of it. But enough of that. This little series that I wanted to call, I guess, Random Ramblings. The series where I wish to go out into the middle of nowhere and record myself talk about various cultural things such as arts, media, I don't know, art criticism, history, topics such as current states of illustration, general art things. Sorry, I got distracted by geese. I think that you should see them in a bit. But I had no real plan for this series beyond just going out into the middle of nowhere and hitting record and talking to a microphone. So prepare for a lot of rubbish and a lot of waffle. But I guess I should start with the first topic that I had wanted to kind of talk about was really just university. And I had talked to my tutor about it when he asked me how I felt once handing in my biggest project. And I said I didn't know. It's a really strange feeling to finish university. I know I'm going to do it again for the next academic year of masters. Oh my god, they even got little goslings. I'm really hoping the geese actually come round here. No? It seems I may have scared them off. That's a shame. But back on track, I said I didn't know. And I truly didn't. I didn't know because I didn't really ever sit down and kind of process everything. Mainly because I was constantly doing projects. With smallish couple-month breaks in between for holidays. But other than that, I never got the chance to actually sit down and reflect, really, on university and kind of ask the seemingly obvious question of, okay, so what did I learn? And that's both an easy question and a difficult question to answer, mainly because it's a loaded one. It's not a quantifiable thing, almost. Well, both is and isn't. I've learned many different ways of interpreting and approaching illustration, as well as over my time, especially in the last 2 years, really. We're going to ignore COVID learning. We're just going to pretend that didn't happen and that was a little, call it, blip, essentially. But in the last 2 years, I had really kind of broadened out my views of what illustration is and really can be. Naturally refining my personal interests and kind of passions for what I'd wish to do with my career, being kind of album cover design and specifically album cover illustration, really. And I guess fine art portraiture at the same time, but that's different. But I had always approached kind of illustration with the similar mindset that most people who, when they hear the word illustration, think of illustration, that being kind of book illustration or something more relatively traditional, you know? Even though with times changing so much, it's grown much more beyond that. It still very much is, don't get me wrong, but it's blossomed into much more of a wider practice for people, I guess. I mean, digital kind of platforms and everything else and other things, which is a entirely different topic for discussion, which I'll probably address in a similar video like this. But I approach illustration as quite the traditionalist of in the sense that it must be like this, it has to be like this, it has to be like this. Really kind of putting rigidity to what I thought my practice should be. I'm going to talk a bit quieter now because the geese are making their way. You should see them in a second. This is genuinely the cutest thing ever. I'll take a minute now. This is my Attenborough moment. And look at that. The wild geese with the lowly child, slightly dim, trailing behind. That was worth it. Me clearing up this forest for about half an hour of trash and moving everything and clearing leaves just to get that shot, worth it. That was it. That's the video. that's the clip. That's the clip from this video. What was I saying? Yeah. So I had put barriers essentially around myself and kind of thought, well, the way I work and the way I kind of interpret illustration as is right now, I limited myself, I guess, at the very start, especially at the start. I guess I'll talk a bit about the first year, mainly because, well, COVID learning really doesn't, well, distance learning does not work with creative subjects. It just does not. And I think I produced some of the weakest work during that first year. I mean, I only really got to kind of spread my wings in a bit in the very, very final project where we had to make some kind of narrative book. And even then, looking back on that project, it was rushed. It was awful. It was so unbelievably terrible. I do want to kind of return to it. Because beyond the awful execution, the rushed nature of it, and the kind of haphazard putting together of it, of staples and printer paper, I really think I could return to that project. And Jesus fucking Christ, what was that? What the fuck was that? Okay, well, there's your second clip, me being scared shitless by something or other. But yeah, I'd want to revisit that project. But when I compare that project to what I did in my final piece, and some of the work before that, I mean, ashamed isn't really the word. I can't be ashamed of something that I, at the time, thought was the best thing I could do given the circumstances. And given my mind at the time. So I can't really be all too annoyed at myself. If anything, it's more motivation. It's more motivation to go back onto that project, look at it and think, right, now that I have all the time in the world to refine, rewrite, redraw, and republish this piece of trashy garbage that I created 3 years ago, it's something to put on a planner. Because, again, the concept of it, I was really happy with. I think that was an ant. Great. But circling back, if I look back on the work that I had made over the previous years, there is a kind of clear growth in my practice, in my working style, and my approach to tackling challenges. Because for me, one of the greatest things about being an illustrator and being handed a brief is looking at something, thinking of an idea, and then trying to work backwards and piece together a plan of how you would actually execute it. Because you might have a flash, like a camera flash of a visual in your head, of a visual that you think, that's it, that's what I want this work to look at. And when you start putting pencil to paper or pen to paper or paint to paper, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. No matter what you try to do, no matter how clear your visual is, even despite you making sketches and drafts upon drafts to fill a library, it just doesn't work. It doesn't click. Something is missing. And going backwards and picking apart the seams of this idea that you think of, it may not be the best idea. You may fixate on it. But fuck me, is it satisfying? Is it satisfying when you finally see the idea not just be finished, but actually come together? Because that, more than the finished project, is both encouragement, motivation, and reassurance to you in a really satisfying way that what you are doing was right all along, and you were on the right path, and you didn't waste the past week and a half of your life trying to sort things out. That to me is a bit more satisfying than actually finishing a piece of work. I mean, I can talk at length at my final major project I did, which I might do in a different video. That entire thing was that exact process of me being unsure, but once being unsure for months. I think for about 3 months, I was unsure of what I was going to do, because things started to really, really come out and started to go wrong. But then I started making. And once I finished the first portrait of a collection, I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, that's the first one. How easy was that? I can really do this. This is genuinely now a quantifiable thing of progress. I can now mark down the portraits I've done out of a set number. And at the same time, also enjoy the process of making them. Yeah, it was lengthy, it was arduous, I barely slept. But that process and that feeling inside, knowing that you're working to something really great, personally, that you're working something towards what you think is really, really great, or something that you think is really special, and you can just start to see each individual assembly bit come together. There's no feeling like it, really. I guess that's what it is to be an artist, I guess. It is that kind of I guess we live off an internal gratification, in part, of scurrying away into our workspaces, sitting for hours and hours on half the sleep that we need, working towards something that may or may not work. It's great if it does, and if it doesn't, it's frustrating momentarily, but once you've been there and restart something else or start anew, it kind of erases it in a part, because you're again emboldened to try again and not give up and persist until you hit that mark and create, essentially, without thinking too hard about it. because I guess what I realized was the more challenging portraits that I'd done took some planning and kind of thinking over and chewing over of how was I going to put together the separate elements that come together. And I didn't start making them immediately. I had kind of thought it. I had taken a section of it, looked at it, looked at what I needed to do, got everything together, and then I went to work, slowly and reassuringly, and then my mind switched off, and my hands did the work. And well, I guess your mind kind of talks to your hands and everything, but it doesn't feel like that. Because I could have music in the background, I could have a film in the background, and I'll know what's happened. And some time will go by, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, shit, maybe 4. And you look at your desk and you have a full portrait finished. You look at the time and you think, well, shit, I should have gone to bed. But this evens things out. This makes it entirely worth that time that I had not even noticed go by. But to circle really back to the original point, was that I learned that letting things not go to plan opened more doors to me and my practice than keeping note of the doors that are already locked, if that makes sense. That made more sense in my head, I'll be honest. But it's into the decisions. Because we're encouraged to pick apart why we do things, why we draw certain things the way we did, why we chose another material or a process over another. And while in part it's a good thing and in part a bad thing, it's a double-edged sword. Because while thinking analytically about why you do things the way you do them will help you in the end, at the same time, to me, it kind of takes away a bit from the artistic process of analyzing every kind of change or detail or decision, color, placement, composition, everything, and get an art thesaurus and analyze every kind of word in in your work that applies, and it kind of takes the fun out of it a bit. You stop looking at it as a piece of artwork. You start thinking about it more. Well, you start thinking about it critically, but at the same time, you also start thinking about it not in a way that I feel art should be kind of thought about. That's a kingfisher. Oh my god. I really hope that's on camera. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one in the flesh. What's this? My second Attenborough moment? I think he's taking a shit. Oh, ain't life grand? But I think I'll close off this kind of rambling for today with a couple words. Universities both make you a better artist, but also I think in part make you really dislike being an artist at some points.